In today's video, we'll show a highlight from our recent conference keynote. That will be about how to use AI tools to turn Figma design system into production-ready React components. The approach basically consists of 3 or 4 different sections. The first and the most important is, of course, the Figma design system. And when we say design system, it means like every component documented, well-structured, the variables are there, and the modes are set up. Then design system is being translated into the AI environment with Figma native API, REST API tool, and also MCP server. I will talk about that in a moment. And next we use like Cursor AI for this demo, together with Cloud AI for actual code generation. And in the end, we are using GitHub for governance and also maintaining version control over the design system repository. So the first one is the structured foundation, and that refers to our Figma design system. We usually begin our work with token-first design system, which has multiple layers of semantic tokens. For this demo, we will be doing like just a very basic one with light and dark themes. And usually we work with the components and we make sure that the properties are done in the right way. And we have all the variables applied for everything. And we also make sure that the properties, all the switches in the component setup are making sense, because if they don't make sense for us or for developers, they will never make sense for AI. So we're just going through every point of the design system to make sure it's clear, it's readable, and easy to understand. Because if the designer or developer can see the intent of the visual element, AI can't see it also. And if this foundational step is not made well, everything downstream, like code, docs, adoption, falls apart. Then we're using Figma REST API. That's like already there for a couple of years. It allows us to grab all the variables and also like not just grab from Figma, but also create two-way synchronization. So it updates both ways. If we do a change in Figma, that will into the code base and vice versa. And then MCP server is a quite new thing, and not many people know about that yet. But that MCP means Model Context Protocol, and that's like a universal adapter for AI tools. It lets AI models like Cloud, Gemini, and others connect to the design in Figma and see like the purpose of the design, the properties, the code syntax. And then like with that dual setup, we're able to create the environment that is fueled by REST API tokens that are coming from Figma. And then we use MCP server for continuous development of the design system components. So REST API gives us kind of the foundation of the system, and MCP server acts as a helpful tool for an AI agent to build all the components. And that gives us like very well generated code that can be translated to different code languages. And the most important is that if we are working with a developer team, we can use the same approach that developer is using on their side, and we can create a guideline for AI to follow that approach when building the components. This is really important because sometimes if AI is not instructed properly, it will give results that are not really usable for the developers. And from this like row of screenshots on the right side, you can see that all of this code was AI generated, but it refers to the Figma properties and Figma variables that we have defined in our designs. And then when the components are done, we will usually move into the storybook and we will create a full-scale documentation for these components, also done by AI and without any developer instructions how to make that. And that's where we collect all of the design tokens, design properties, different states. For example, in this screenshot, we're overlooking the button component, and it shows exactly the same properties that were defined in Figma. So for the developers, it means that they can grab and use the components instantly, and they don't need to dig into our design system files, or they don't need to go through multiple Figma pages to understand how the design system works. So, and for us, for the designers, it means that what we produced from the design into the code will stay like it is shown in the storybook. So there will be no drift across the variables, there will be no missing states and no forgotten documentation. So we also eliminate a lot of repetitive work done by developers trying to handcraft all of these components manually. Okay, so that's enough with the theory. I know it can be tough to understand quickly, but let's move to the actual demo and see how AI actually builds our button component using Figma REST API and MCP server. Right now, I will make a request for Figma API to grab all the variables that we have defined into two CSS files. So basically this creates, just a second. So it created a design system base and design system mapped, which shows all of our variables that we have defined in Figma. And they're not just plain design tokens. They actually refer back to our foundation collection. So this is very important to keep it structured. And this script can actually run automatically. So when the change happens in Figma, it will be reflected in our code base. So this is the cursor environment. And that's where we, as a designers, so I don't have a lot of experience writing code, to be honest, but it took me just a little bit amount of time to get into that and actually make a proper component from Figma. So I would say any designer can actually go into that and try. So continuing with that, I will just quickly open my browser to show you kind of the implementation of the storybook before we actually do the prompt. And that is important because the storybook shows us all the components that we have in our current design system. This demo is not done from scratch because it is time consuming to set this up. But if anyone interested, we can schedule a session with Brian on how to get this initial setup done. So what I say initial setup is what you see right now is the storybook implementation, and that actually is linked back to Figma. So all the states, all the all of these button states are here, the icons, the text, the fonts. It's all done by AI, and it is linked with Figma. And now we will use this demo library to continue creating our components. This is a very simple one, but for the sake of time, we'll be creating this button icon component. And few important things. So we need to make sure we have dev mode access in Figma. That will give us the option to turn on MCP server. And when we have just a selection of the component set in Figma, we can already move on to cursor. And let's say we want to implement, I will actually just paste the rest so we don't lose time. So I would like it to use Figma MCP server to grab all the component data and also map all the variables to our variables that we brought from Figma API. And also I would like it to use the small thing that we have created before. It's the loader animation to make it very consistent and clean. So let's just click it and see what it gives us. As you can imagine, AI is not exceptionally consistent. So sometimes we might need to do twice, or we might want to fix minor things. But as you can see, it's already getting back to Figma and getting the code of that component that I have selected. And so now it needs to write the CSS styles for this component and also the storybook integration. So this is all happening with Cloud AI, and we did not make any other setups other than the storybook integration for this demo. Just giving it a few minutes, but essentially what it does right now, it grabbed all the variables from Figma and compared them to the variables that we brought from the Figma API, just to make sure that everything stays consistent and we are not creating any new components or variables or design tokens. Yeah, for people who didn't work with code before, this might be all too much, like a little bit too much, but we imagine that our roles in the future will evolve, and we do need to get into these tools to understand how we can kind of upgrade ourselves to the state where we can use them. So currently it's already created the component and it is creating the storybook stories right now. So what we aim to see right now is that this component will appear in our storybook documentation. It seems to be almost done. I think it's a little bit sad today because I did this a couple of times and the speed is not perfect. I think it's a bit tired, but let's see. Should be almost there. So you can see that we have a couple of components in our design system already that we made before the demo. But essentially the new one is the icon button component. And that's what the AI generated for us. So the documentation is based directly on what we documented in Figma. And it seems that it captured all the things and also made accessibility features, which is quite important as well. So let's see, we have a bunch of styles in here and they're named, and even the order is exactly the same that we outlined in Figma. We have loading state, we have hover states, press states, disabled, and all the stories as well. So just to imagine that this was done from a single prompt is already a lot, and it requires almost no time to fix the minor issues. But what it gives us is the fully developed design system. For example, this toggle component was developed in a few minutes rather than taking a few days to actually create and document. There is a very good quote made by Anna Boyer, a designer advocate at Figma. They're only scratching the surface of what's possible when design systems and AI work together. And that's not just a shift of different tools, right? It's the way how we build products right now. And I think this is very important to understand. So just benefits of this approach for enterprise teams. It means faster delivery with less handoff overhead. It means consistent UI across all dev teams because we as designers produce the visuals of the product and not just And now it's not just the visuals, but also the React code components that are ready to be inserted in the code base. So designers maintain end-to-end system quality, and while developers, they focus on functionality, but not repetitive manual tasks